The world is rich with incredible ancient archaeological discoveries, though some have gained far more fame than others. While iconic sites like Egypt's pyramids and Rome's Colosseum are widely known, many equally fascinating finds remain largely overlooked. In this video, we aim to shine a light on these lesser-known yet truly remarkable archaeological treasures. There was a big win for the British Museum in 2008 when the institution received £350,000 of funding, allowing it to keep hold of a rare and unique astrolabe that was discovered during building work in Kent 3 years earlier. The artifact, which was made in the 14th century, is the ancient equivalent of a pocket calculator. It's one of only 8 of its kind that are known to exist anywhere in the world. Aside from being able to tell the time, the astrolabe can measure height and depth, and can even be used to map the stars. It's now known as the Canterbury Astrolabe Quadrant, and is on display within the museum. While it's referred to as a quadrant, the piece is actually complete. Geoffrey Chaucer, author of Canterbury Tales, was known to be an expert on astrolabes. So considering this one was found in Canterbury and was almost certainly made during the author's lifetime, who's to say it didn't once belong to him? It might look primitive, but this was among the most sophisticated calculation tools available to the human race prior to the invention of the computer. In October 2022, 10-year-old Eric Briskerud spotted something interesting in a sandbar while out rowing with his father on the Glomar River in Norway. His dad indulged him by going to take a look, and he's very glad that he did. Eric's keen eye had spotted a 1,000-year-old Viking-age wooden bowl. Finding wooden relics from so long ago is a rarity for archaeologists, so the bowl is an important discovery. A couple of bowls of this age have been found in Norway before, but this one is different because it was found in one piece. The others turned up in fragments. Experts from the Inlandet County Council say that the bowl was made from either a ball of wood or a large knot from a tree, which had been hollowed out. It only survived for this long because it's been preserved by the sand. The artifact is roughly hewn, so it likely would have belonged to an everyday Viking rather than someone rich or powerful. It's harder to find the belongings of everyday people than it is of the rich and powerful because of the manner in which they were buried or disposed of. So the bowl is so rare that it's almost unique. You'd expect to find a place with a name like the Cave of Hercules in Greece or Italy, but it's actually in Tangier, Morocco. The cave, or to be more accurate, caves, are set into one of the most northwestern points on the African continent, and are steeped in so much myth and legend that it's hard to tell what's real about their history and what isn't. One of these myths says that the caves were visited by Hercules himself, hence the name. He slept in the caves before stealing 3 apples from the garden of the Hesperides as one of his 12 labors. A different legend says the cave network is so long that it runs for 15 miles, reaching Spain, while a third claims that Gibraltar's macaque monkeys only made it to Gibraltar because they left Africa via the caves. None of these stories are true, but the truth is even more amazing. The caves aren't natural. They take advantage of natural features. But the first opening to them was carved by the Phoenicians more than 2,000 years ago. A second opening was added centuries later by the local Berbers. The tradition of handing out medals for significant military achievements goes back a very long way. It's just that the medals that were handed out more than 1,000 years ago didn't look like the medals of today. As proof of that, here's an 1,800-year-old military medal that was found in the ancient Turkish city of Peri Adıyaman in early October 2022. The medal is notable not just because of its age, but also because of the shape it takes. It's been carved into the shape of the mythical ancient Greek Gorgon Medusa. Legend has it that anyone who gazed upon the Gorgon would instantly be turned to stone, which makes her an unlikely candidate to become the face of a metal. However, there's a method to this madness. The word Medusa meant guardian in the ancient Greek language, so Medusa often appears as a protective presence in the art of the era. A Medusa medal could be seen as a sort of protective amulet. Historians think it's likely that this artifact was given to a soldier for their success in guarding a person or a place from an enemy attack, but can't yet be any more specific than that. The ancient Egyptians were such a mysterious people that we'll probably never be able to unravel all of their secrets. Their rituals and rites are an enigma to us, and that enigma deepened with the discovery of the so-called Falcon Shrine in October 2022. The unusual shrine, which depicts hitherto unknown ancient rituals and practices, was discovered during planned archaeological excavations in Berenike. This was once a thriving Greco-Roman seaport full of traders, and is also known as both Berenice and Berenice Troglodytica. Archaeological evidence suggests that the shrine was created somewhere between the 4th and 6th centuries, during which time the city was partially controlled by a nomadic eastern desert culture called the Blemis. The harpoons and cube-shaped statues seen on the shrine are offerings that were specific to the Blemis and their beliefs. The Falcon Shrine is so named because of the 15 falcons that were found buried within it, all of which were accompanied by their eggs. To make things even weirder, there's an inscription which reads, "It is forbidden to boil a head in here." We have to presume that's a reference to animal heads, because the alternative is gruesome. Pompeii is one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world. But people tend to think of Pompeii as one cohesive site rather than considering all the smaller discoveries that have been made there. One of those discoveries is a domus, known as the House of the Veti. Like everything else in Pompeii, it was frozen in time when the volcano struck in the year 79. The domus is so named because of the men who live in it. Aulus Vettius Conviva, who became a priest after being freed from slavery, and Aulus Vettius Restitutus, who was also a freed man. Almost all of the beautiful frescoes in the House of the Veti are fully preserved and are considered the best surviving examples of what historians call the Pompeian Fourth style. 12 different mythological scenes are painted across its walls, including the punishment of Ixion and Dionysus discovering Ariadne. We know the names of the owners of the House of Veti because they were found on a pair of bronze seals inside the front hall of the Dummas. The relationship between the two men, save for their shared experience of slavery, is unknown. In 2021, a 200-year-old canoe was found in Lake Mendota in Wisconsin, USA. Almost exactly a year later, in September 2022, another canoe was found in almost the same place. Only this one's even older. Radiocarbon analysis of the canoe dates into almost exactly the year 1000 BCE, making it 3,000 years old. That means it's comfortably the oldest canoe ever found in the Great Lakes region of the United States of America, beating the previous record holder by an entire 1,000 years. On top of that, it's also the oldest direct physical evidence of people in the region using water transportation. Scientists and archaeologists were so stunned by the results of the test that they had the ancient vessel retested 3 times to make sure there was no mistake. The fact that 2 ancient canoes have been found in such close proximity makes archaeologists wonder whether there was once a lakeside settlement here in ancient times. And so they're now scouring the former shoreline to see if there's any evidence to confirm the theory. The canoe will be cleaned and conserved with the assistance of local tribal members. Since we're talking about Roman discoveries, let's talk about the magnificent statue known as the Dying Gaul, which also sometimes goes by the names of the Dying Gladiator and the Dying Galatian. Mystery surrounds the origins of this work of art, but it's commonly believed that it was commissioned around 2250 years ago by Attalus V of Pergamon to celebrate an important victory over the Galatians, who once lived in Anatolia. Similarly, it's thought that the sculptor was Epagonus, the court sculptor of the Adelaide dynasty, but that can't be proven either. Whether it was sculpted by Epagonus or someone else, it's a replica of a Greek bronze that was created around a century earlier, but was lost long ago. The statue was incorrectly known as the Dying Gladiator until the 19th century, because when it was rediscovered in the 17th century, the historians of the time believed a gladiator was what the sculpture represented. It was only after a re-examination that experts determined the torque, thick hair, mustache, and weapons of the figure in the sculpture are more likely to be Celtic than Roman, that the piece was given a new and more accurate title. Excavations at the site of Zhengzhou City Archaeological Park in Zhengzhou, Henan Province, China, have been ongoing for some time and are likely to keep on going for several years, especially if archaeologists there keep finding artifacts like this gold mask. With an estimated age of more than 3,000 years, which dates to the time of the Shang dynasty, it's even older than another recently discovered ancient gold funerary mask, which was found in the Sanxingdui sacrificial pit in 2021. This new mask came from a tomb inside a cemetery in the southeast corner of the enormous archaeological site and is one of more than 200 objects found within the tomb, which appears to be that of a nobleman. The colossal tomb is about the size of a New York City block, covering 10,000 square meters. While the mask is mostly featureless, it's large enough to cover a whole adult face and would have been designed to serve a specific purpose. The people of the Shang dynasty era believed that gold granted protection to the body and prevented the spirit from being scattered upon decomposition. So decorating the mask would never have been the intention or the point. Let's talk about something that was made by a Celt, or at least we think it was. It's the Braganza brooch, and it's a gold ornamental fibula. The artifact is around 200-300 years old, and if it wasn't made by a Celt, it was likely made by a Greek craftsperson for a Celtic Iberian customer. The history of the object is a little murky, as the circumstances of its supposed rediscovery during the 19th century are unknown, and it changed hands between several private owners in Portugal before it was bought by the British Museum in 2001. Several of its previous owners were members of the House of Braganza, including Fernando II, who was the consort of Queen Maria of Portugal, hence the artifact's name. The fibula is notable not just for being made of gold, but also because of the figure attached to it. An otherwise naked warrior wearing a traditional Celtic helmet protecting himself against a hunting dog with an equally traditional Celtic sword and shield. The piece is in pristine condition, save for a missing pen. In July 2022, the staff at the Archaeological Museum of Stavanger in Norway opened its doors one morning to find that somebody had left something unexpected in a box on its doorstep. No, it wasn't a baby. It was a collection of jewelry that appears to have come from the grave of a high-status Viking woman. The surprise package includes oval buckles with silver plating, pearl jewelry, and pins for shawls or clothes. It made for an exciting morning for the archaeologists in the museum, who pointed to the presence of a mosaic pearl as evidence that the jewelry set comes from somewhere close to the year 850. Some of the pearls are coated in gold and silver foil, which was a common Viking Age trick to mimic the appearance of real gold or silver, and thereby convince your peers that you were a little richer than you actually are. Staff at the museum think that the jewelry was ditched on their doorstep because of a misunderstanding about a law. Some people in Norway think that landowners have to pay for investigations and digs if discoveries are made on their land. So, the people who found the jewelry might have wanted to ensure it went to the right place without having to pay for it. The law doesn't actually work that way, so the museum would love to hear from whoever left the package behind. Our next artifact is a truly strange thing to look at. Perhaps you might think it's an early prototype for an automobile or a four-wheeled variation of a bicycle. Actually, it's neither. It's the Colt wagon of Stretweg, and it's 2,600 years old. The unique vehicle was found in an ancient hostage culture grave close to Judenburg, Austria in 1851, surrounded by bronze M4A jewelry. Weapons made from iron and tack and harness gear. Historians have difficulty interpreting the object. At its center is a 12-inch tall figurine of a woman standing upright, holding a bowl above her head. She's surrounded by other humanoid figures in both sitting and standing positions, and deer-like animals and horses. Experts have suggested that the scene might be intended to depict sacrificial activity, but that's far from certain. It's possible that the bull might have held sacrificial blood, or might have been used to hold libations. It's a one-of-a-kind artifact and is currently on display at the Archaeology Museum of Schloss Eggenberg in the Austrian city of Graz. The occupant of the grave it was found inside has never been identified. Conducting archaeological research in Ukraine is a little difficult at the moment, for obvious reasons, but the experts who work there are doing the best they can. Recently, Their efforts have been rewarded with the discovery of a cluster of 40 significant ancient Scythian objects in Kotelva in the country's Poltava region. The discovery came as a surprise to the experts, who were about to abandon the dig because they believed anything significant that may have once been in the ground had been destroyed long ago by the construction and operations of a nearby quarry. Just as they were about to give up, they found the remains of grain storage deposits, pits for garbage disposal, and communal buildings. They haven't yet found any residential buildings, but they suspect that the residential area of the settlement that the Scythians appear to have built at the location may have been utterly destroyed by the quarry. Aside from the larger-scale discoveries, the team has also found spinning wheels and fragments of ceramics, suggesting that this was an industrial area. Another find, a collection of arrowheads, suggests that the area was defended. The buildings and artifacts are thought to be around 3,600 years old. The Dibjörg wagon is a logical place to go after looking at the Stretwijk Colt wagon, but its name is inaccurate. It's not one wagon, but two, discovered as a composite in a peat bog in Dibjörg, Denmark in the 19th century. Archaeologists have identified it as a votive offering and say it was ritually dismantled before being placed in the bog on purpose around 2100 years ago. Back when the wagon was discovered, it was seen by the people of Dibjörg as confirmation of ancient folk legends about wagons full of gold that were allegedly hidden in the bogs hundreds of years earlier. Modern historians aren't so sure, though, as they say that there are similar legends about wagons laden with gold hidden in bogs in the south of Sweden, and none have ever been found there. More to the point, the Dibjörg wagons weren't full of gold when they were found, although they're of excellent quality and would likely have been used for ceremonial purposes before they were placed into the bog. The wagons are now on display in the National Museum of Denmark. It's now 100 years since Howard Carter opened the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. So there's a greater spotlight on Carter's work this year than there has been in decades. As a consequence of that greater spotlight, experts now believe that Carter may have kept some of the jewelry he found inside the tomb for himself and sold it on the black market. Marc Gabold, an Egyptologist from the Paul Valéry University of Montpellier in France, has spent the year trying to prove his claims of theft and track down the missing pieces. Thus far, he's produced photographic evidence that a broad collar that was found on Tutankhamun's chest when the tomb was opened has since been broken off into pieces and sent all over the world. Pieces of the collar are now in the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art in Kansas City, Missouri, whereas its beads were removed and strung onto a necklace that was unsuccessfully listed for auction in 2015. Somebody must have taken the collar apart and sold it a piece at a time. And that somebody was most likely Carter himself. Another set of beads, this time from a headdress found in the tomb, now appears to be strung onto a necklace that's in the St. Louis Art Museum. Carter was a great archaeologist, but he also appears to have been a thief. We're staying in Denmark a moment longer to look at the golden horns of Gallius. These stunning artifacts made of sheet gold are so named because they were found in the town of Galahus in southern Jutland. The first horn of the pair was found in 1639, but the second wasn't discovered until 1734. Experts say that both horns date to the beginning of the 5th century, which would be the start of the Germanic Ice Age. Historians still aren't 100% sure what the horns were used for. They might have been blowing horns, but it's equally possible that they could have been drinking horns. A drinking horn made of precious metal is more likely than a blowing horn, but we can't rule either possibility out. Tragically, the original horns were stolen in 1802, then melted down and sold. Cash taken of the originals taken in the 18th century have also been lost. So the copies of the horns that still exist today are based on casts of replicas. Even these copies have a history of being stolen, with the most recent such event happening in 2007. A woman known only as Taputi is thought to have been the first female chemist in Mesopotamia and might have been the world's first female perfume manufacturer. She was a clever and literate woman and left some of her formulas for her perfumes behind on a series of 3,200-year-old clay tablets, accompanied by instructions. The partially translated tablets, which also bear Taputi's name inscribed in cuneiform, were found during excavations in Assar, Iraq, which was once part of Babylonian Mesopotamia. In July 2022, experts recreated Taputi's perfume by following her formula. The language has never been fully translated, but scholars understand enough of it to translate the essential parts of the text. We know, for example, that Taputi used myrrh, horseradish, balsam, calamus, cypress, flowers, and spices to make her fragrances, which she mixed with solvents and then distilled and filtered to create the finished product. Taputi's instructions also suggested working only at night under a full moon and seeking communion with the stars in the sky. But the modern-day experts passed on that recommendation. Unfortunately, nobody involved in the experiments has seen fit to tell us what the perfume smells like. Perhaps it was awful. The Bettelina map is one of the oldest topographic maps in the world. This precious piece of history can't be found in a museum. If you want to see it, you have to travel to Camonica Valley on the Italian side of the Alps, where it's one of many ancient petroglyphs. While it's obvious that the prehistoric engravings on the rock are a map, opinions differ about what it might be a map of. It's possible to interpret some of the features on the map as plots, paths through the mountains, or perhaps even entire villages, but every interpretation requires a little creative thinking. There are 109 separate figures on the rock, but not all of them were carved at the same time. Some of them may have been added as long ago as the Bronze Age, 3,000 years ago, but the more recent markings are 800 years younger. Because of the additions, it might be more accurate to say Bettelina maps rather than Bettelina map. It's likely that this was the work of people recording their territory, but we don't know which people or what territory. There are 3 things we know for sure about the Picts, other than that they lived in Scotland over 1,500 years ago. The first is that they painted their faces for battles, which is where their name comes from. It was given to them by the Romans, who considered them savages, but were also extremely wary of them. The second is that they loved making stone monuments. Beyond that, almost everything is guesswork. Pictish stones or Pictish slabs are reasonably common discoveries in Scotland. But examples like the one that was reported at the start of November 2022 are far rarer. The stone, which was found close to Doune in Perthshire, was covered in ancient inscriptions which might be the full Pictish alphabet. The alphabet is called Ogham, but it has never been seen in full before and has never been accurately translated. If the experts are right about it being present in its entirety on this slab, which also features depictions of animals and birds, it represents our best chance yet of cracking the translation problem and finally working out what the ancient Picts had to say for themselves. We've already looked at the golden horns of Galahus, and we said that it was impossible to know whether they were blowing horns or drinking horns. It's far easier to be certain about the purpose of the Oldenburg horn. It's definitely a drinking horn, and it was made during the 15th century. The horn is made of gilded silver at its base, but it's elaborately decorated with enamel and attracts many admiring looks from visitors to Rosenborg Castle in Copenhagen, Denmark. The elite members of Danish societies treated drinking horns as prized possessions during the 13th, 14th, and 15th centuries, often passing from one generation to the next as heirlooms. The Oldenburg horn might have been the first such horn not to be bovine in origin. It was made specifically for King Christian IV in 1465. But history doesn't tell us who made it. Apparently, he intended to gift it to the 3 kings in Cologne Cathedral, but changed his mind and brought it back home with him. It's been in Rosenborg Castle since it was sent there by King Christian V in 1690s. The most likely person to discover an ancient archaeological artifact is an archaeologist. The second most likely is a member of the public making a discovery by accident. The third most likely is a police officer, which is how this treasure trove of ancient goods was found in Jerusalem in March 2022. Israeli police raided the home of a suspected illegal dealer and recovered hundreds of ill-gotten artifacts, including a collection of extensively decorated 1,500-year-old bowls. To afford them their proper level of respect, we should call them magic bowls. although there are some historians who believe that the term swearing bowls would be more appropriate. The lengthy inscriptions on the bowls are intended to be magic, spells, but in some cases it'd be more accurate to describe them as curses. The objects, all of which are written in ancient Hebrew script, were often deliberately broken after the spell was written and then buried beneath houses in the hopes that they would ward off anything from pests and predators to diseases and demons. Some of them were even written in the hope that they'd counteract curses written by other people, which is the height of paranoia. Norfolk Island in the South Pacific is an Australian territory today, but historically the occupants of the island were Polynesian. In November 2022, archaeologists from the Australian Museum taking part in a planned dig on the island came across an impressive collection of ancient Polynesian tools, including hundreds of stone flakes and a pair of basalt axes. It's very hard for scientists to obtain accurate dates for artifacts made of stone, but we can be reasonably confident that these tools were made and used between the 13th and 15th centuries. That was long before Europeans arrived in the area. There's so much archaeological material at the site that the team working there is increasingly confident that there was once a Polynesian settlement there. But thus far, they haven't been able to find any evidence of houses or burial grounds. Only one Polynesian settlement has ever been found before on Norfolk Island, so this would be a significant discovery if it could be verified. It wouldn't make sense for anyone from the other settlement to leave so many tools behind so far from their home, so there must have been a purpose to bringing them here. Archaeologists have discovered hundreds of old baptismal fonts in Europe, but none quite like the baptismal font of Hildesheim in Hildesheim Cathedral, Germany. Most artifacts inside the cathedral are well documented, but this one isn't. It was probably made during the first third of the 13th century, but there's no way of knowing for certain. The fact that it's so mysterious only adds to the interest. But even if we knew who made it and when, it'd still be considered one of the most outstanding objects of its type in the world. The font once stood in the western reaches of the cathedral's nave, but was moved to George's Chapel in 1653. After being removed and placed in a museum while the cathedral was being renovated between 2010 and 2014, it was returned to the nave. The decorative style of the pot has been identified as Gothic art, but its architectural elements show a clear Byzantine influence. To make it even stranger, the faces of the figures etched into its surface are unusually expressive for the era. The entire font is one big enigma. You'll find plenty of ancient standing stones in England, but because Stonehenge hogs so much of the limelight, many of the others are ignored. One of the best examples of that is Andal Stone on Stanton Moor in Derbyshire. It's also sometimes known as the Anvil Stone and the Undal Stone, although locals call it Twopenny Loaf for reasons that have been lost to the fog of time. We're not sure why it's called the Anvil Stone either, as there's no evidence the stone has ever been used. As an anvil, the stone stands alone in the middle of a field with a dry stone wall around it. The wall is a relatively recent addition. The stone itself is thought to have been standing for well over 3,000 years. In fact, it's possible that it's always been in this location, but about 3,000 years ago, people started decorating it with cup and ring marks. We have no idea why they did that. And unfortunately, it's impossible to gather any reliable archaeological evidence from the site, because so many generations of local children have used it as a climbing wall. We can't even say when people first started calling it the Andal Stone. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.